Hi Ed. Hi everyone who's watching. So I'm Robbie. I'm a coach based in London, and this is a really fun and slightly uncomfortable thing to be doing, which is that we're gonna do some coaching today. That's what this video is. Um, it's with Ed, who's a former client of mine. We worked together over a number of months, the year before last, and we've spoken a few times since then. And part of the purpose of this is to have some of my work, this kind of work, available for people to see. One of the things that occurred to me before doing this is that sometimes when I watch coaching, I wonder, as a coach, but also potentially as a potential client, like, what's the agreement that's here? And so I just want to make it really clear that I asked Ed for some help with this. I'm very grateful that he said yes. He knows that this will be recorded. He knows that it might end up on the internet somewhere, and so we've spoken a little bit about what he might not want to speak about and where those boundaries might be. And we've also spoken that whatever happens, either of us might decide that it's not the right thing to share this session. So there's that safety and trust, which is important in coaching. And a little tech thing to say, the vagaries of technology, the little gremlin today, means that on my screen, I can see both of us, which means that if I'm not looking directly at the camera, that's because I'm looking at Ed. It's not because I'm checking Facebook. Is there anything else, Ed, you wanted to say before we dive in?
No, I think that's it, really.
Nice. Cool. Well, again, thank you for this. I'm excited to see what will happen. You know, as you know, one of the reasons I asked you to do this is because the work we did together 18 months ago is some of my favorite work that I've done, and you're absolutely a wonderful person to do this kind of work with. So thank you. And
no, thank you. I'm super excited. Like, this was good timing. Really
okay.
good timing. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into some stuff.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna
hasn't it?
It has. Probably been about a year since we last spoke, just under.
Yeah.
So look, really open this up then. So, we're here on this Friday morning. How can I support you?
So I quite like to do, I really appreciate doing like maybe a what's happened. Although I feel like it's almost a bit cloudy. I'm very in the moment of what's going on at the moment, but definitely maybe a bit of checking in on achievements and stuff. And then I kind of thought about this before you got to me, and like, I think there's 3 main areas of work that I'm kind of doing, and I just maybe wanted to have an opportunity to talk them through and then just see what comes up and see what lands or feels like. Just see what comes up, and like, I feel like, because I think in the next year it's going to be about working out where I really want to move my energies to, and then also some kind of, as well as that, kind of checking in on the bigger picture and having an idea of strategy for kind of moving forward on, or how much I put into each of those things. Some really specific stuff around generating. Like, I'm really crap at pitches, I feel, and also, like, when people ask me what do you do, I think I'm really crap in those conversations, and I feel like I miss. Maybe I don't miss opportunities, but I just want to be a bit better prepared. So maybe something around that as well.
Okay, I got a really funny quick thing just about that, just because in my coaching session last night, someone was asking about that, and Rich, my coach, gave a great piece of advice on it. He just said, like, if people ask you what you do, like, you don't have to accept the premise of that question. Like, you don't have to answer it. You can answer whatever question you want. And there were 2 frames he offered on that. One is, you can just tell a story. You should say, it's funny you should ask. Just the other day, I was doing this piece of work with this person at this company or this individual, or I was teaching this class, and this is what happened. And then tell a story about what that is. And then you see if you get into a conversation with that person about who gets interested in what you say.
Yeah. And
the second one you can do is, you could just tell a story. So you could just say a different kind of story, a story about yourself, maybe. You could, and I know this, right? I know some of your stories, so I know what that might be. You might just say, well, it's funny you should ask what I do. I used to be a teacher, and I was a great teacher, and I loved loads of things about it. But actually there were these things that made it very difficult for me at this time in my life. And so I decided to move on. And now I'm doing this work in this area because it was really valuable for me, and it enables me to fit in all these things that I wanted to create from work. And then again, see whether it opens up, see whether the conversation goes. And of course, what is important is that sometimes the conversation doesn't go anywhere, but both those things, rather than having to say, because this is hard for people who do my job as well. If you say you're a coach, most guys or they say, what kind of coach? So it's like, I do sometimes say that. Quite often I do, and I just offer the chance for people to, to bite on that if they want to, or not if they don't. But those are just a couple of quick things because that's so fresh in my mind that I wanted to share.
Banging. No, that was really good because I that lands really well because and I really noticed when I listen to that, you immediately think of people who do that, and you're like, oh, that guy did that, and then we had a really interesting conversation all about the stuff he does. Whereas when you say like, oh, I'm an education consultant, or I design wellbeing programs for businesses, they're like, all right, cool, and then it's done, like, because it's so finite. Whereas I really like that idea.
Yeah, it's very specific people that will respond to that with, oh, an education consultant, because a lot of people don't know what it means. And that's what I've noticed with me as well, right? So what happens is people who have received coaching before, who are coaches or who are interested in that kind of world, they like the idea of coach, and they're like, oh, interesting. So I sometimes add on the word leadership because it opens that stuff up a bit more. People are like, oh, leadership, I understand what that means. But it's a powerful thing to tell the story, whatever that story is. And I really liked Rich's idea of using the kind of politician's trick, but using it for good rather than just to avoid the question, right? Using it to create a more interesting conversation, which is the point in those introductions.
Yeah, for sure. And then people latch onto what they want to. That exactly that happens to me a lot, which is like, oh, what does an education consultant do? And it's always that rather than the wellbeing stuff. The wellbeing thing, they just think, oh, you sit on beanbags like chanting or something. So they're not interested at all. Or if they are really like clued up on it, so like the retreat I just went on, I said, design wellbeing, they'll just be like, oh, great, because I know what that is. Yeah, it's just mindfulness and stuff like that. So yeah, so kind of, I really like the idea of using a story.
I'm going to just catch one of the things you said as well, which is people hear, like, I'm going to reframe it slightly, but people hear their story in the story you tell. So that's the other thing, that if you just give them a couple of words, then that's hard for them to hear themselves and understand and make that connection that you're talking about. Whereas if there's a story there, humans love stories, so there's a real opportunity for them to, especially for someone with such an interesting story like yours. And again, I know that, so I'm able to reflect that to you, that it's a great story. Right? It's one of the reasons when we first met that I was kind of like, whoa, this is a cool guy. Like, I want to do some more of this. I want to, understand this story.
Yeah.
And I mean, a good thing about me is that I think that about a lot of people. Like, I love stories, but you particularly have a great story, which as you speak about it, I know this, and we could play with this story today. Like, that could be one of the things. Like, but I know your story is a great story. And so I know that as you tell that story to people, people will latch onto it, listen to it, and hear themselves in it.
It's so interesting you say that, because so at that meditation retreat, I chatted to 3 people really latched onto when they said they said, what do you do? And I said, oh, well, I kind of teach dance, and I also kind of design wellbeing programs and teach mindfulness, and I'm also an education consultant. They're like, oh my god, like, how did you get into that? And then I was like, oh well, and then I told the story, and then these 3 people ended up really talking about either how they were working in the NHS, or one was working in the NHS, one was a teacher, and one her husband was a primary school teacher, and they were all super connected to the story because they're like, oh my god, I really want to break free, but it's so scary and all this. And it was really lovely to be able to, I didn't really offer advice, but definitely offered hope, and just was like, it's totally doable. Like, I'm here now, right? And I don't have massive bags under my eyes, and I'm not a jittery mess. Like, I'm really enjoying life and the challenges, and it's not always easy, but it's totally doable. And approaching things from we did some early work on approaching things from the position of possibility, not impossibility. Like, okay, so how do we just make that work? If that's a problem, what's the way around that problem? And just doing it bit by bit, step by step. And it was really lovely. I've shared contact details with all of them because I think they found it quite nourishing to hear that there's hope beyond the kind of normal buy-in of the 9 to 5 and things. Yeah.
All right. So we've done a little sidebar already on
Yeah.
Let's bring it back in. We got this time this morning. So there's those things that are in there. There's some kind of check-in that I know is you found valuable in our conversations before, because it's hard to measure your own progress. It's hard to know how well you're doing, in air quotes. Then there's these 3 areas, and what comes up might be something about the next year where you want to move your energies. Like, I noticed that when I heard that was like, okay, that sounds like to me, that's the underlying bit of those first few bits. The reason to check in is to know what next.
Definitely.
But there's also some specific stuff. And I just want to check in, right? Because I really appreciate, and I know this is one of the reasons you get a lot out of coaching, is that you bring things to these sessions ahead of time, and you think about it and you reflect.
Yeah.
But I want to check in again in this moment. And maybe this is a chance to relax out of the head, right? Because that's quite a lot of thinking. And what's and you can choose where to go. You're very present, very aware of yourself. Maybe it's the heart, maybe it's the gut, maybe it's somewhere else. But as you check in with that, there may not be, but is there something deeper or more present that it would be useful to focus on today?
No, I think that checking in around those things and taking time to take stock, and also actually giving myself credit for some things, is such a useful thing. And that really lands, because I'm like, I think I've done I am quite hard on myself despite all these things. And the biggest thing I work with in my own mindfulness practice is self-compassion, because I'm just driving on to the next thing. So I think that really lands like that. I really think that I would really appreciate that. And those things that maybe, I think that is a really good place to start. I don't think there's something more important or deeper than that, actually. And then, like you said, I think what comes out of that will feed into the next part.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge you for your awareness to know that you're quite hard on yourself. Right?
Yeah.
And I want to share, you're not alone in that. I'm the same, and I know lots of other people are, especially people who achieve a lot, because it's one of the things that helps you achieve a lot, right? If you're always hard on yourself, it makes you go on to the next thing.
That was the thing that came up the most not the most, but came up a lot on the kind of meditation retreat, was just how much I rehearse conversations and rehearse moments. And hilariously, so we do work as part of it in this place, this amazing place down in Devon, and I was shoveling just I would say it must have been about 4 or 5 tons of food waste into these compost things, just shoveling. And I was rehearsing the moment someone came over and said, "Oh, you're doing such a good job." And I was just what? And just noticing, it's really good to be aware of how I can, something to work on is really just to be kind to myself when those moments don't come. I don't need to do all these things for the gold star on the collar, which is quite shallow and fickle. And there can come a bit more from within. I kind of, maybe move away from needing the affirmation from other people. And that's why I think that first thing of going on those and kind of just taking a moment to be that's a good thing. It will be a really motivating force for me moving forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I want to, before we do that, right, I don't need to do that. I know you well enough now to tell you you've done really well. Right? And I really mean that. I haven't, we'll do that now. We can check in with those things. But I have absolutely no doubt that you have done really well, and that you've done really well in 2 ways. One, by achieving a lot of stuff and doing work and creating this business that you're running. And 2, by not ending up with the bags under your eyes, a jittery mess, right? And neither of those things are a given. But I'm sure. I was going to say 99% sure, but I don't even need that 1% get out, right? I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. That really means a lot. Like, yeah, it's good. Thank you.
What's good?
Just like taking stock of, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's taking a moment to like really to, I guess, it's that thing of being good. Like that was a major thing that came out. Is really important to me, and something that I can hold lighter. I can hold that idea. So it's lovely for you to say like, oh, I know you've done good, because of course, like, and I can open up to the, and not be afraid to say like, I'm doing really well, and not hold that back because it's big headed, and because it's not, like, I am. But even if I hadn't done anything, like, I'm still here. Like, it doesn't matter. There is like good, bad. It doesn't. They don't really exist. Like, some days you wake up and things feel good, and sometimes you wake up and things feel bad. But it's all just, yeah. A lot of what I'm learning to do is that there's a sense, like this idea of Buddhism, of letting life live through you. And I'm not Buddhist, but been studying a lot around that. And I mean, they need some good stuff. There's some good stuff in there. It's like centuries old, and they're like, it's so relevant even today, the teachings and stuff. And a lot is this idea of just pinning yourself slightly less to these events, almost like taking credit, but also not. The thing about taking loads of credit for what you do is then when it goes wrong, you also pin that to yourself. When actually, yes, part of you create your own luck, of course, and your energies and stuff like that help, but also there's a lot of luck in there. So it's kind of like having the balance between, I understand that, yeah, it's very hard to enunciate, but it's that idea of holding things in a way that is light enough that you can really, you can still appreciate the successes without pinning your self-worth onto those successes. So I can really appreciate all that I've achieved without that defining who I am. I think that's like an important distinction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I love that frame. I've been playing in that frame of life happening through me a lot myself. So I love that you've brought that in. So I'm wondering, let's sit in that place for a few moments. Like you said, it's about taking a moment and noticing. So let's sit in that place and just see what emerges through you. And I guess the question I'm going to ask is, what emerges through you? No, wait, let me get this question right. Yeah, we're going to sit. I want you to sit and notice what emerges through you. And the question I'm going to ask, and this doesn't have to be what emerges through you, of course, because this is like, this is one of those funny things where are we in the by me? So the frame I like is the world is happening to me, or the world is being created by me, which often is much better than the kind of victim place, or is the world happening through me? And there are great times for all those things. And the funny thing about a conversation like this is that I'm kind of trying to create by me the through me, which isn't like really how it works in the ancient wisdom, right? But
totally.
Let's try and do it and play in that space. So the place I want to invite you into is, what are you really proud of from the last 6 months or 12 months or 2 years? And I want you to sit and see if you can allow it to emerge through you.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah. Do you want to? I'm gonna do some kind of like grounding and stuff.
Yeah. Take some breath.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like the most. I think I don't want to get too teary, and I just get really weepy. So you're gonna have to forgive me, but I'm gonna like just keep a little bit in reserve. But I think I read back the first meeting notes we had in like 2016. May 2016 was our very first meeting, and like one of the things was like, I was in that really hard job and really struggling with anxiety and just so in my world and like bound, and I just really want to be there for Katie, and I'm just yeah, it's really nice to be able to put a lot more thought and time and energy into family and be a lot more present for friends, but particularly Katie, and I guess pay back and support her this year. Like she's had we've both had a tough year, but being able to be supportive and really present, not every moment. Like, and I'm not saying like I've been a perfect husband, because like I definitely haven't, but in terms of like overall being there, being supportive and open and communicative and reflective, and like all those things, I think, yeah, that's the most important for sure. Like more than any work stuff, and the work stuff has enabled me to really focus on that a bit more, and yeah, it's been like really lovely. Yeah, really lovely.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I can feel it as well. I can hear some of the answers to this already. So some of the reason that that's important to you is to pay back the amazing support that you've had in that marriage, in that relationship. What else makes that important to you, that piece that you've just spoken about?
Really, it's like that. I think it's to do with that love and relationship, and like that's so much more real than anything else. And I think it's particularly on the retreat, what was interesting was the mind goes to the superficial because it's juicy and quick and interesting, and like sitting there in silence with a numb arse and like an aching back is none of those things, and you keep coming back. But what's really interesting is you become aware that those things are superficial, and the mind is just grasping at like the little inconsequential things, and then that maybe makes room for the really important stuff. And then you notice like in those moments of like clarity, and the moments when I did really connect and the back wasn't there, I was just really embodying like that sense of being connected to the people in the room and the floor and like just everything. What was really there was that sense of like overwhelming connection with Katie and family, and like a real sense of compassion and love, and that's a really like freeing thing, because that's that sense of like let life live through you, because then the other bits where you're trying to maybe force things a bit, or those other elements about job, the pernickety little things which really you can go into, like it's nice to come back to the most important things, because those things then suddenly become much more manageable, and they're the things that can maybe stop you a little bit in life from getting through to the important stuff. That's very rambly.
Oh, wow, that was beautiful. So there's a few things I heard in there. One is that this change that you've created in your life in the last 18 months, 2 years, has really enabled you to be in that place, at the very least in your relationship, but I suspect across your life, that place of compassion and love and connection and freedom, which enables life to happen through you. The changes you've made have enabled you to be in that place much more often. And the other thing that I hear is that stuff is really important to you. You know, you said it's more real than anything else.
Yeah. What a brilliant thing. It's really good.
What's brilliant?
Just being able to do that, like hearing that as well, because I have. That's definitely the best thing I've achieved. Like, forget everything else.
Get really specific. Tell me what's the, like, as specific as you can. What's the best thing you've achieved?
Creating space so I can spend more time with family and like give myself more fully to all that stuff. Yeah, it's really lovely. That's great. Yeah. And it's interesting that wasn't my initial. That wasn't like my initial thing as well.
You were like, all these great, customers, clients I've had, and I've done all this cool stuff, and I'm teaching dance, and there's loads of stuff that's happened, right? But like, this is why it's fun to play with that frame that you brought in about life happening through you, which is, or the life emerging through you, or the world emerging through you. Is that maybe it's not, and you did a beautiful thing, which is you took the moment to ground and center yourself to enable you to get to that place. And then what emerged was not what you had at first thought.
Yeah. It's good, this mindfulness stuff.
So I think we should stay here, right? Stay in this place. So if you take that moment again, the question is still there. What are you most proud of? And maybe it's the same thing, and maybe something else emerges. And again, it's like, allow it to emerge through you.
I think the thing that really comes up. Oh, I just realised that my cat feeder has just given some feed for the cat, and she's going to go mad. I'm just going to open the door. 1 second.
Okay. Yeah.
We got a cat.
Exciting. Is that the next? That's what emerged. Let's play with this, right? So there's something like, this could be a sign from the universe. So what? Because what's the gift of the cat feeder going off?
It's nice having a cat. Yeah, it's great. I think that's tied up with the whole family and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to get too gushy about my cat, but yeah, it's really great. But no, the next thing that really came up was, I'm really proud of what I've done through the swing dancing stuff. Like, that was always so high on the priority list. Like, when we were talking, it
was like top thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, wasn't it like?
It wasn't quite top.
On the post-it, right?
I've still got the post-it notes on my phone as the background, because in moments, and yeah, the top one is Time for Dance. Is the first one, and I properly, I probably got loads of Time for Dance, and it's been interesting to balance that with other things, but I've always really prioritized it. I started like a training group with just a handful of people that were really good, but most importantly have a really good mindset towards improving, just for the sake of improving, and not really being too judgy. And I had this real vision for, I want to start this group, and we really riff off each other and bring different things. And I'm really, really proud of that it's still going. And I think the people involved really appreciate. Provide my training as a teacher has really helped, because I can provide like a scheme of work that we're going to work on. And I'm not teaching, but in terms of the arc of, let's work on musicality, or let's work on rhythm. So we'll do this kind of thing, like planning those sessions. And I just thought that's a really obvious thing to be able to do, but they really struggled with it. And I was like, oh, I can just do that every week. And they were like, oh yeah, amazing. And there's that with our swing dance class. We have 48 students in it's like we do 2 hours. So it's 2 different classes across, 2 different classes across.
You and Katie teaching, right?
Yeah. Sorry,
When,
I'm going
when,
to open the door because the cat needs to get out now. Hang on. Let me do this. Sorry. Yeah, me and Katie teach together, and she's really busy at work. But what's really good is I can get all the planning done and stuff like that. And yeah, it's great. It's so great. We started with 8 students in Crouch End a couple of years ago, and then we moved to Dalston. And actually, also, you know, we were lucky because we inherited some people from a class. But we've had a few people leave, but like lots of people join, and I really enjoy the pedagogy. You know, I wrote the book, The Swing Teacher, which we'll talk about, and people really buy into it. Like they really appreciate the kind of rigorous and really techie and geeky approach. And what's great is it's turned into like it's turned from like a nice hobby thing to a really good earner for me, in terms of that extra, you know, that day's paid for, in terms of doing 2 hours in the evening of dancing and helping people to dance. And it kind of helps me to get that element of teaching in as well, which I love. Like, I love teaching, and that's why I became a teacher. And so it's great because I can kind of get that fix a little bit from that. Not quite enough.
that's what I hear, right? It's like, and let's not forget, I was going to bring it in, I'm glad you did, right? Let's not forget that you do love that stuff, and you're an expert, right? So it's like, I don't thought ever, like, this is a classic thing that that kind of someone who's masterful thinks. I just thought everyone would do this. Like, I just do this stuff, right? That's the story of someone who's great in their craft, you know, or it's the story of someone who's really found the thing that their natural talents enable, that, you know, fit with. And for you, it could be both, right? Both creating that kind of learning program is a great fit for your talents, and then delivering it, right? It brings in the building stuff, the plumber, and it brings in the creative, the winning people over, the being the center of attention part of you. You're good at both those things, and you've worked on it and mastered that. And so I'm not surprised. Here's why. Here's an example of me not being surprised and knowing, right? I didn't know this would be exactly it. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Like, I don't have that feeling of surprise that you would have 48 students, or that you would have created a high-level learning experience for. And I bet there's some good swing dancers in your learning training group, right?
Really, yeah.
I'm not surprised. You've got 48 people coming to a swing dance class, and you've got a group of some of the, I'm guessing this totally, some of the best dancers in London.
Yeah,
learning
they're
from
wicked.
you.
Well, the other guys, they're not like learning from me. I'm definitely learning from them. They're like, it's a collaborative, like cooperative thing.
Yeah, but what you've said is, and I'm going to catch that, and I don't buy that totally, right? They may not be learning the dancing from you. They may not, but they're learning from you because you're creating that space and you're bringing a rigor to the learning which they wouldn't otherwise have in that way.
Yeah, mate. No, I think I can give myself credit for that. Yeah, I think they are. And of course, we all bring our strengths to, like, everyone. The good thing about the group is, like, everyone has a different strength and brings it in. And yeah, and we've managed the growth of it and kind of evolution of it, like, really well. And yeah, it's such a powerful, it's great. It's such a powerful thing. I just, it still brings me so much joy. And yeah, maybe it's not the time to talk about this. Maybe we'll talk about this in a second. But like, you know, the book and that kind of thing. I've done nothing. I just sat on a book for like a year, and I maybe think I know why. But I would really like to do some problem solving around that. But maybe later on. I don't know.
Okay. So. Okay, you've got an instinct to do that, maybe later on. So what's the instinct to do right now? Is it staying in this place and finding the other things, the checking in?
Yeah, I think still doing the checking in. But and it's really nice to reinforce, like, one thing I notice is how clear that sense of, like, I really love being involved in this dance community, and like I really enjoy using pedagogy in the teaching, and even in that practice group. Like, that's what I really enjoy. That I love that geeking out about it, and it's maybe important to like recognize giving time to that is a good thing. It's not like an extra thing, and I think that's maybe something I can learn from. It's seen as maybe a bit of a frivolous extra, but I don't think it is. Like, it's such an important, so it can be I think it can still be such an integral like part of my work, what I see as my work. So that's a useful thing. But I think, staying in this space, but maybe moving on to like the next overall thing is useful.
Well, let's play the same game. Like, check in, take a breath.
Yeah.
What are you proud of, Ed?
Yeah, I think the kind of mindfulness training I've been doing is really good. It's so helped me in life, and it doesn't mean it can become this little policeman on your shoulder that you should never get angry and you should never, and it's not like that. But it's in that, we're human beings, but it's in those moments being able to maybe reduce the amplitude of whatever it is, or maybe come back to your normal kind of equilibrium quicker from those times of, I don't know, frustration or anger or whatever. And I really definitely feel that I've achieved a lot in that. And competing, so I'm just about to send off my application to be registered with the UK Centre for Mindfulness. So that's like the end of a year of training. I'm very proud to have kind of done a week silent meditation retreat, because it's not easy, I can tell you. It's like, there are moments where you're like, I ran away twice from it. Just, you're allowed to like go for walks, but I was like, I'm just going to walk in that direction, and when I feel like it's okay, then I'll like come back again, just to prove that I could escape if I wanted. I noticed like I reflected afterwards where it might come from, but real sense of feeling trapped, and the rigors of having a timetable and sticking to it. And it partly comes from that idea of being good. A lot of what goes around in my mind is like worrying about breaking rules or letting people down. And that then ties in with this ramping up of being good and doing things well. And that was difficult, therefore, to be in these meditations where you can have an entire meditation where your mind is just thinking about cake for the whole thing, and there's nothing you can do about it apart from observe and come back and observe and come back. But after like 5,000th time, it's a real challenge to bring compassion and kindness to that moment of recognition, and not to be disappointed that you're not, reached enlightenment and after a week.
Yeah, I want to maybe that's it, but I want to just poke at this a little bit. What is it about completing this mindfulness training or the mindfulness work you've done in the last year that you are actually proud of? What is it?
I think it's that I think I do it well. Like, people have really been. I've got lots of really positive feedback from the groups I've worked with, but also it's really helping people through the stuff that I've also been through. I really enjoy helping people and caring for people. That's like a big part of my personality. It ties in with the teaching thing. And I'm really proud that I can, there's been people on the course so I've just recently reconnected with them just to see how they are and check in. I'm running a silent retreat on the 31st of March and kind of inviting them to come back on that if they want. And it's been lovely, really lovely hearing people's stories, right from it just isn't for me. But I found this kind of stuff and that really helps. That is just as brilliant as the person who said, oh yeah, I've quit my job and now I found a much better job, and I regularly go to the local Buddhist centre and do meditations because this is just such a useful part of my life. And people who are then the best thing is that kind of trickle out effect where they're then being supportive. So this lady who quit her job because of real stress and anxiety, she is now helping one of her friends who's going through real trouble, really difficult time of struggling with anxiety and depression. And she's like, wow, it's amazing that now someone can say to me like, wow, I've seen what a change you've made in your life, and there's hope for me, and I can do that too. And she said, you know, because she came and spoke to me during my sessions and after my sessions and told me all about it. And I opened up to her and said, well, yeah, I've really struggled with anxiety in the past and my job and stress, and that's okay. And she cited that as a real source of kind of support, because she's like, well, if the guy who's running the course did that, then maybe I'm just a human being rather than, you know, a failure or a weak person. And yeah, I'm really proud of setting that up and being able to deliver those courses and just help people in really real context and having a real impact on their lives, like caring for people.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it's good. It sits really well. It like feels really like open, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Let's play one more. Let's take a breath. Ground yourself. Allow things to emerge through you. What are you proud of?
I wonder how much is because my brain's getting involved, but I'm going to say it anyway. I am really proud. So I designed and delivered a load of training for the Institute for Apprenticeships, and did this kind of the education side of things. I'm really proud of that, like that training. It was really intimidating, and I'm still I've got one more session with them. It's intimidating because I had to create training around assessment for the people that, you know, help people create assessment plans. And that's really scary because you're like, they know loads about this. And I was creating training around that. And it was to kind of go, obviously their knowledge is very functional and working knowledge. So I went very theoretical, so that kind of the reasons behind the decisions they make are then clearer. And because they're going through a big transition period at the moment, it was to help support them be a bit more future-proof or nimble, you know, whatever business speak you want to use in the future. I'm really proud because that's tough. Like I was essentially just sat here in this room with a desk and a computer, being like, right, come up with some training. And that was really challenge. It was a real challenge from a motivation point of view, not having people to work with. And I learned about I should involve like the clients more to bounce ideas off, because I really get a lot from that. But yeah, it was a great contract to win, and that along with the Sugru project I did. And yeah, I'm really pleased that it's really tangible, proper work. People, when I say that I did that, they're like, how did you get that? I'm like, well, just chat to people, and one conversation leads to another, and they're like, yeah, this sounds great. We should get you to do something. I'm like, yeah, you should. And it's great. And I think I can give myself, I'm really proud of creating from basically nothing, creating those opportunities. And even if they didn't come off, like I have created lots of opportunities that haven't come off. It's like, we're saying that as well. But and like, I'm equally proud of them, like those conversations where you still just have a really interesting coffee with someone, and you can you get past the pitch to sharing your story. Interesting, like we're talking about before. And then you're like, actually, people buy into that. And I think, yeah, that's good. I think I'm pleased with that for sure.
Like, I want to acknowledge all of that you've just said. It is amazing, right? You've created this stuff from scratch, right? When we first, when we first met, you were still working as a teacher, and actually, even when we finished that first work, you were playing with like, how's this going to work? Like, how's it going to add up? How am I going to create these things? And now you've created these pieces of work with the Institute for Apprenticeships, or and with Subaru and these other pieces, and you've had these conversations, and like, you just chat to people. And I mean, I know you, right? So I know that chatting to you is a great experience, and I'm sure if lots of people do that, then those things emerge, but there's also a sense that you're trusting that and you're doing it and you're making it happen.
Yeah, and I think like that, I'm really thankful, because I think you really helped me at the beginning to be like, that can be enough. And I think that's like, that was good. It's such a positive thing, because it's meant a lot. And I appreciate the reason why I wanted to do this at the beginning is just to reconnect with that confidence of like, you can do it. And it's really useful. That's what I've wanted to do, like start from these things I'm proud of and pleased with, because that it's such a powerful force for good in terms of my work, because it is scary. And so like, I remember in our first sessions, that was a big thing we did was, well, why don't we just chat to people and see what happens? And it properly worked. It was really, it was great. And I think it's nice to reconnect with that feeling as well, because I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, and look, like, so one of the reasons that I agree with what you've just said is I think it's so, when you're, especially when you're working alone, it's really hard, but that can be working literally alone like you, or it can be when people are in leadership roles, or it can be, other situations as well. It's particularly hard to hold to your convictions, keep your focus and feel that you're on the right track, or that it's the track that you want to be on, right or wrong, who knows. But so I'm really glad you're getting a bit of that feeling now.
Yeah. And just trusting in emergence, that like work will emerge, and to a degree. And what's been good is having the dancing and the mindfulness courses, and just kind of, well, the dancing is probably the most stable thing in terms of work-wise, because we know we're always going to get at least like 15 or 16 students, which just covers our costs and stuff. That's fine. And then, there's a lot of like, well, what happens when this contract runs out? But so far something's come up, and I've just kept telling myself like, it will come up. I'll just keep having conversations and be the yes man to a degree. And it's now been a year and a half, and like fairly consistently I've been busy. There's only been, as I can remember, like a couple of months where I've been like, where's the next thing coming from? And the whole of the rest of the time there's always been something either in the pipeline or actually on the go. And that's like, maybe that's a wider thing that I'm like, I'm proud of being able to trust in the emergence, and also thankful that Katie has given me the opportunity, like massively thankful, because she has a steady salary and she's just been like, go forth and prosper. And I really like, it's brilliant to have that permission. It's not even about money, it's more just permission, like in my own head, that I can do it.
Yeah, why do you think she's so happy to give you that permission? I'm guessing she's happy the way you spoke about it then. Why is she willing to give you that permission?
Just because, for sure, like where we were before, where I was mentally in terms of my mental health, it's just like another planet. I was like scraping through, and now, we all have good days and bad days, but now I can kind of just be so much more involved and do fun things and help her through her difficulties, or just be more grounded and supportive and all that, and just actually be here. Like, that's probably the best thing about it. So it's worth it from that point of view.
Yeah. I want to catch something that you said before as well, just before you shared about this, and it's great to share about the, what do you call it, tangible work that is really there, right? But you caught it and you said, maybe this is just my head talking. So what was that?
Because like in my head I've categorized those three things, the things of like, what, dance, swing dancing, education, and then so like the dancing side of things, education, well-being. Like there's three clear categories, but actually I guess the family kind of thing actually was probably the most emergent thing. Yeah. But I am really proud of what I've done in education, and that work. It maybe doesn't sit as like, it's not as strong in terms of that feeling of passion, stuff like that. What I do really, really love the process of creating, like coming up with those ideas and creating stuff. I guess the flip side of it is then there's lots of days of sitting in front of a computer and grinding stuff out and just getting there, and that's tough when you're on your own, and I think that just takes the, you know, it's harder work from that point of view. It doesn't feel, it's not one of those, when I'm creating it, it's not one of those moments when I'm necessarily in flow. And even in the delivery, it's really challenging. Everyone I've delivered to, like the people at the Institute for Apprenticeships, are so lovely, and I have to say, like, afterwards when we were having a bit of a debrief and they said, how do you think it went? I was like, well, it wasn't doing it to kind of a room of teachers, and they just, you know, teachers are really critical, and having, I can say that kind of being one, if you put a video up of someone teaching in front of a room of teachers, like, they tear it apart, they're savage. And it was really lovely to work with a group of people who actually just fully, like, gave it a go and bought in and were really professional and polite, even though I know some of the things I was saying they maybe disagreed with on some levels, or thought, like, actually you don't get us. And I knew I had to be brave on those things, because the work that I was doing was the right pitch, like it was right, but I knew it would maybe land like that. So that's the only thing, is with that work, it maybe doesn't give me that as much of that sense of, like, but it's still important, good work, and it brings in, like, important income, and it fulfills, you know, looking back at my post-its on my phone, it fulfills that, having a voice, being, I read back in one of our first things, it's like being a rod of expertise, and it was like a quote, and I was like, yeah, like, I fully am, like, that's amazing, like, people listen to what I say, which is, yeah, and that's really cool, and yeah, I have to, like, pinch myself a little bit and be like, whoa, that's really nice. Yeah, and who knows where, I feel like the education stuff has happened more organically, almost without me I haven't put too much time and effort. I've kind of just worked with those projects that have come up. I've been very lucky in the timing of those things, and also, I guess, in part, it's come about from creating those conversations and being interested, and then being able to respond quickly to the opportunities that arose. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's not quite, that's why I'm talking about, it's like, for my head, I'm maybe a little, it just doesn't quite connect as closely with, like, my inner whatever that is. Yeah.
Let's remember that, right? Because that feels like an important distinction. Inner
should we call it something other than pow? Maybe Inner Pow.
I think I like the it's good.
Okay.
I want to just pull something out of that story. This may be me connecting dots, so, like, let it drop if it doesn't land.
Okay.
Before, you spoke about being good is a powerful narrative for you, you know, not breaking rules, not letting people down. One of the things I heard in that story, let me just check this. So for some people, this is what's coming up, that would be about pleasing people, right? Letting people down and pleasing people. Now, I don't know if that lands for you. Is that, it is you? Okay, great. Because what I heard in that story is, what you said is, they might have disagreed with some of the stuff I said, but I knew it was the right pitch and I needed to say it anyway. So I just want to pull out, because it sounds there like you were risking letting these people down, risking not pleasing them, and breaking some of their rules, or some of the rules in that space. And I'm wondering, you know, whether that lands or what it brings up for you. And also, if it does land in some way and there is some link there, what is it in that space that enabled you to do that?
That's a really good question. I think, so it's not maybe as clear cut as, like, breaking rules. It's just that I was suggesting things which, given the context in which they work, would be very difficult to do, because they've got to work with loads of people, short period of time. And I'm saying, well, actually, you know, the working in a far more hands-on way, in a sense, being a teacher to these people from industry is kind of the most effective way to get some of the stuff they want to across, which pedagogically I really stand by. The difficulty is then, well, how can you do that when you're working with thousands of people, in such a short space of time. We've not copped time to this. But in a way, I was like, that was very much, that was still an important thing. It wasn't so much that I was like moving away from pleasing them. Like I was working very much to the brief. And I think the kind of like the key people were very pro that kind of, that idea of being very hands-on with those groups. That was an important part of that work. So yeah, it's interesting picking up on that though. But I maybe that's not, and it sounded like that, but maybe that's not that much of an example of where I was like being rebellious.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately what supported me was like knowing that that's the right thing, knowing that, and my experience of working, with, like the example from education is, it's much easier to teach pupils to pass an exam than it is to really teach them the content. But ultimately, although that's much quicker and easier, they often don't do as well. Ultimately, it makes it much less efficient. Something will come up that throws them, and then they're not as good. So you say, okay, then we have to teach them far more depth of knowledge. And it's like, that's the parallel in terms of their work, is actually giving more knowledge. Seems like a long cut. It seems like it takes more time, but overall kind of limits the chance of stuff bouncing back or whatever. I mean, that's it. I don't fully understand their situation, so that's why I kind of said it in a like.
Let me just pull out something from that. I'm not sure if this is right, but is this the difference between, like, I'm wondering what the flip side of being good is, right? And I know that, we might say it's being bad, we might say it's being rebellious, but I just wonder if what you've just said there is that in this case, one of the flip sides is it being easy and being right.
I think one of the flip sides of being good, like you mean like, what's the antithesis of that, as in being a pleaser?
So sometimes being good and will serve you really well.
Yeah.
And sometimes it won't. And it sounds like one of the things you've been spotting over the meditation, those kind of things, is some of the times is how much that's a part of you. Is that right?
Yeah, I think when it is less supportive, this idea of being good, is when you give too many fucks. To coin a phrase from a colleague, they were like, darling, just give less fucks. This guy, he's like pretty fun. And he was like, and I think giving less fucks is really useful sometimes, because you're not, like I said before, pinning your hopes on what other people think. And that can be very constricting. And I noticed that when I was doing that work for them and these other guys, I would be paralyzed because I would be constantly self-editing. I'd come up with an idea and I wouldn't even get it down, because I'd be like, oh no, that won't work because because I was trying to be too good. I was trying to get everything perfect or get everything right. And interestingly, sorry.
No.
Interestingly,
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, interestingly, I think that is part of the reason why I haven't progressed the book, like the Swing Dance book.
So this might be you answering the question I was going to ask anyway. I'll ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Where have you been doing this most in the last year?
Definitely the Swing Dance book. Why haven't I done anything with it? I think because I've been a bit paralyzed by like worry. It's two things. One, I was worried about putting it out there and people like stealing it in a way and just being like, this is great, we should just do this, and I'm going to include this in my camp because I can deliver this, because it's a really, really functional book, like anyone could. And I'd be worried about like, oh damn, I've done all this work and given this expertise and now I'm a nobody and like I can't be involved. I want to be in those conversations because it's like, well, I love it. And the other reason is just worrying that, and I don't know why, because other things I don't really care, but in this, maybe because it's so much of a community and stuff, and I don't know, I found it really paralyzing about being like, oh, are people going to hate it? Or, I don't know. It's so not me though. I normally just like go for it.
I mean, let me catch this stuff. Let's do this while we're here, because we might, we might have come back to it later on, but it's here right now. So, I mean, look, the truth is, Ed, like, I don't think I even need to say this bit, right? But I'm going to say a little bit anyway, because I think you know what I'm going to say, and you know what you need to do, and you know what's the real thing and what's the not real thing. What if people steal it? Like, what if you end up with this book and all this work that you do gets used in all the swing dance retreats around the world. Like, what if there's this trickle effect where your people are using your work to help their people, and it's creating this going on outside that, and more people are getting this experience of that you get from dance, this freedom, the inner, right? How terrible that sounds.
It's really silly, isn't it? Yeah, it'd be great. And what an
Amazing.
amazing thing to be a part of that and to have done it, and not like, it's not about, and what, it's so interesting to be like fickle about that and wanting the plaudits. And I guess that ties in with the wanting to be good and wanting to be seen as, and
Yeah, I don't have a judgment on that, right? I'm aware that I do it as well. Like, I like being significant. That's like, it's been part of me since I was a kid, right? The first time someone said, "Do you want to be?" The teacher said to me, "Will you be in this school play?" I was like, "Oh my God!" Like it just changed my perspective on what I could be, right? But it's a big part of it is about finally being noticed and being significant.
yeah.
And I don't have a judgment on that, right? Some people need to do that because it's a part of leadership and it's all this kind of thing, right? It's important that people, accept that. And there's some dark sides to it and some shadows as well. You're talking about those, the kind of the striving for that and that alone, but I don't think you're in danger of falling into those places. The other thing I want to just catch and just push back to you, that thing, it's like, what if you just trust it?
Yeah.
Trust that they won't steal it. Trust that your story is your story and your work is your work.
Yeah. Man, I needed to hear that for sure. Like, what am I doing? just trust people, and they're good, and like trust the emergencies.
Some might not be, right? Some might not be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
People will say no. There'll be some people who are idiots. Like, they might steal your stuff. I've been working with this coach a lot at the moment, and he told a funny story about how he was just like, someone just he put some of a copy from his website into a thing online where it'll search the internet and find, and this other person just stolen his whole website. So like, there are people who are like out there a bit weird, right? And they might steal your stuff, and some people might not ask you to help, but some people will.
And like, if one did, and the thing is, I've had conversations with people, like I've started them up and then it's petered out because I've got to that point of like just giving or whatever, and it's petered out, and I should have just like gone for it. In part it's because it's also like not quite finished and I need to just like pull my finger out and like get finishing, but that in part it's because of that. And it's like, even if someone was like, hey, just come to this like exchange we've got and just do a 10-minute thing, like that'd be great, I'd be fucking made up. And that's where it starts anyway. And I've always said about teachers, swing dance teachers, allowing their content to be put on YouTube, because I'm like, always back yourself as a teacher. A YouTube clip can never be what you do in a class. Like, no one has ever learned to swing dance just from YouTube. They've got ideas and stuff like that, and at a certain level they might be able to like look at stuff and work stuff out, but like then they're advanced dancers anyway, and they're not going to loads of like weekly lessons, and like you're not going for those people. So I need to listen to myself and trust. I'm going to write trust.
Trust in the emergence. Trust the long game. Trust the conversations. Trust just chatting to people. And trust, and what you said as well, right? About the YouTube clips. Trust that the work is good.
Yeah.
And that your work is so good that when people read that book, some people will just use it, and that's great because that's your impact broadly. I'm telling some of my story here, but I think it's yours as well, right? Trust that you'll be pleased, and you've told me you will. If there's a trickle out effect, you said that's what's happened with the mindfulness thing. Imagine if that was happening with the swing dance, right? Imagine if 50 trainers around the world were using it as part of their retreats and their classes, and they're each working with 50 people. And suddenly you're impacting thousands of people's dancing. And you know how powerful dancing can be. It's the top post-it on your pyramid.
Yeah.
So there's that in there, right? Trust the work. I feel like there was another thing, but I've lost it. So.
Oh, it was just in the emergence and what's the worst that can happen? I think is like, so what if no one does any of that? What if everyone steals it? Like, fine,
Yeah.
done. It's better than just sitting on it and then living in regret for the rest of your life, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've got these other pieces just come back, which you talked about, like what a power it is that you can create this work.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. If no one invites you to any retreats, you can create them.
Yeah.
In the end, if what you realize is the book hasn't delivered the one thing that you really wanted, at least you know what the one thing that you really wanted is.
Mm.
And then we can have fun creating that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you book it, they will come.
Right.
That was good. Thanks. I needed to hear that.
Yeah. So we've done quite a lot of what you spoke about at the start of the session. We've spoken about the 3 main areas and done a check-in. We've talked a bit about the book, which came up a couple of times.
Yeah.
We touched on storytelling.
Yeah.
We've still got some time left. So yeah, I'm just going to get you to check in again, and maybe some of the stuff will be the same as what you said at the start. Maybe it'll be different now. What is that you want to have before we finish the conversation?
Yeah, I've got a little, I know, like, one thing I want to talk about is, so right at the beginning, it was really lovely to check in with, I had this mission. I wanted to change the world of work. I wanted to change how people work and approach work so that well-being, like, they look after themselves and I realize now that's emerged in the sense of bringing a sense of self-compassion into the world of work. So, like, we shouldn't be working from 9 till 7 p.m. and like rinsing ourselves and not having lunch breaks and just, and can you do this, and that kind of culture, or, businesses taking on too much. So, let's just get through to this quarter, and let's just get through to this quarter, and then we'll send you to like Lucky Boys or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. I talked about popping the kind of corporate bubble and to help people really change their approach and stuff. And I've really reflected on that recently, in that I've really enjoyed teaching mindfulness courses, but what I really, really want to do is to get some of that teaching and learning into business places where I run. So I've kind of designed a 6-week or an 8-week, it could be as many weeks as you want, course where it's like bi-weekly or once a week, where I go in on a lunchtime and basically teach them something about positive psychology or neuroscience, so they understand how the mind works and all that kind of stuff. They then do something linked to that that's going to boost their well-being, give them a quick fix, but also maybe kind of a longer term fix. Some of them are quick fixes because people want a short, I feel better immediately. And some we can, when we have that buy-in, we can say, okay, this is a longer term thing, but this will really help. And then kind of a takeaway that they're going to practice during the week as a team or an organization. And I really believe in it. I'm like, this is such good stuff. And when I talk to people about it, they're like, oh my God, that's exactly what I do. Yeah, of course you do, because that we have evolved to have certain patterns and habitual responses to things. And they are not always helpful. And that's a major part of mindfulness and Buddhist teaching is all about that. But I'm getting a bit stuck at the moment in getting into businesses. And I remember this when I tried to do the Inspire and Build stuff. It's still Inspire and Build, but I was trying to like get these one-off sessions, and that was such a slog. And I really hated, the thing that really blocked it was I really hated the sales conversations or putting together a pitch document. And so far I've had 2 conversations with people. Yeah, 3 actually, where the conversation's gone really well. They buy it, like the person buy in. So I've got this cheerleader in the business who's like, oh, this is great. And then they've talked to their senior leads and they've been like, get us a summary. And then I've done a summary, which is like, I just am never quite happy with, but I'm like, just go, just send. And then I need to chase it up, but I'm just aware that they're probably going to be like, no. And I wonder if I would love to do something around how to get in there. I feel like when I get in there and I work with at least 1 or 2 businesses, I get some data, I get some feedback. I just know that like that will be the start of someone being like, this is really good stuff, like get him in. And it seems to fit so well with my other work because it's daytime, it's kind of like lunch times and stuff. There's a lot of I can't really do any more evening stuff, and yeah, that's my thing at the moment. That's the big itch I want to scratch in terms of work and development, and yeah, moving that forward. I don't know, that's something that'd be great if we can squeeze in.
So we could, and I want to just check in. That, like, because the thing you said at the start of the conversation, you're thinking about the next year, where you want to put your energies. So there's a possibility that it's that, right? And that you could really put your energy into it. You could power into it. You could, we could get into how do you create more of those conversations? How do you get better? How do you learn more? All these kind of things. But it sounds hard. And maybe that's the challenge and the fun bit, right? And if it is, great. Or maybe it's that the payback is so big, or maybe it's you want to get there and that mission is still important to you. But that work was the fourth thing that emerged, that part of your work, right? As I heard it, right? To me, that felt like it falls into the tangible work. And maybe when you get in, it becomes something different. It becomes closer to the mindfulness stuff. But either way, it came below creating the space, the family and the friends. And it came below the dance, where might lie also the dance book, if that moved on. So I just want to check in. I just want to check that this is a real thing. It's not just what you feel like you should be doing to be good. It's not just the rules of how things work.
So it's so interesting because for me, I think and it's really good to kind of hear that back. For me, I think it is above the education stuff because I love the education stuff, but it tends to be more, it tends to be less like the really fun stuff. And
yeah, that thing, right? I think this is important, right? Because you're not in that real space.
Yeah.
The Inner Pow.
The Inner Pow.
It's something different to that. And it's still good. And we know you do it really well. And it doesn't give you that same feeling. And the feeling is what you're after.
And I think the thing is I really enjoy the mindfulness training. I really enjoy that, working with people in those groups. It's very hands-off. It is trusting in emergence. And someone can get to the end of that 8 weeks and be like, I didn't get it. And that's fine because you've got to welcome the whole spectrum. That's the whole point of that training. And I think the reason why this has come forth is because I haven't truly done it yet. The only experience I've had of it is desperately trying to get those one-off sessions for the previous way that I did it, where it's like 2 hours or 2.5 hours of kind of training. And it was all sales focused. Like you said, it's hard to get started and to get that up and running. And therefore, I've not really experienced working with a business on an ongoing thing. And I think that I think it still resonates because I don't know how it would really feel. What I knew was all of the effort and work and time and difficulty in getting those one-off training things for those businesses was not worth it. And I was like, I'm going to have to get 30 of these or something in a year to make it worthwhile. And there's just no way I can do that. Whereas in part, the model of working with a business over a longer period of time is you can then do more good and it works as a better model, financially, because you're working over kind of a longer period. But also then I wonder whether, because I'll be doing the stuff which I'm so into, it's I really enjoyed the education, the designing, the coming up, I'm good at that stuff. But both of those projects have been on things that maybe aren't quite the same power level. Whereas I'm proper power level about all of this stuff. I just am I find it, you're right. I think the hardness of getting started on that is it's if someone said to me tomorrow, we've got 3 businesses, you can come in and you can run this and they'll pay you only a trial rate. So it'll just pay your bills or whatever. It's not the full whack, but would you do it? I'd be yes, let's do this. This is great. And I might run them and then be like, this is really horrible. People just like leave me, get on with this work. But
I hear that, right? That it's the mission is still there. Like I wasn't sure when you brought that in what you were going to say about it, but it feels like that's still something you're passionate about, and that this isn't a fake thing, right? This is a real thing that you want to do. So we are coming reasonably close to the end of the time. So I want to get really clear. What is it that you want from the rest of our time together? What do you want to have, or what do you want to walk away with?
I think a strategy around how to get those initial buy-ins, like more clarity on the strategy to get people to be like, hey, yeah, you should come into our business, which doesn't involve me like cold calling.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to share, like, this is from you could read this book, actually. I might have recommended it to you before. There's a book about coaching called The Prosperous Coach.
Yeah, you have mentioned it.
Truth is, I'm going to just share with you some of the principles of it now, because I know you like that kind of stuff.
Yes,
please. I could keep asking you until we get to it, but I have some suggestions, basically.
That's the good stuff.
So your question was, how am I going to get to the point where someone says, come in and do this for my 3 companies? They're going to have experienced it. That's how you're going to get to it. They're going to personally know what a difference it can make. That's the easiest way in. This is my feeling, right? So, and I was speaking to a coaching consultant the other day. He said his focus has really shifted. He's realized that he has to serve the real leaders. That often someone in HR, who sounds like they're in charge of that kind of thing, isn't, especially in a small business, right? The owner, the CEO, the MD, whatever they're called. If they really want it to happen in the business, that's when it happens in the business. So there are 2 things that come to mind. There are 2 ways. If I was playing the prosperous coach approach out on this, I'd play it in 2 ways. You've got a load of people who have experienced it already. Either with you on things, or and they buy into you. You've told me that about, they hear your story and they understand it, and they, you connect with those people when they hear that. And there's a trickle out effect from the course you've run. So you can start with, who do you know, right? For those people, who do they know that they could connect you with? Do all of those people know that this is a thing you'd really like to do? Because they'll buy the mission, right? The ones that have got this, that got your story, experienced it, they understand that thing that you just shared about the workplace. So if you ask them, you say, look, I want to do this in workplaces because I want to pop that bubble and enable people to have a sense of well-being all the time and not be in a place with bags under their eyes and, that situation you described at the start. So there's those people. And then there's the piece that you've already been doing, which is, how do you get into these organizations and give them an experience so that they know?
Yeah.
So that they know that they want, because it is an investment, right? And it's the same with clients. It's when we first met, right? You'd already had that story from Sophie, but then we did some work and you felt what it was like. And that's how I'm going to put this to you, that's how you knew that it was the right decision to do some more work.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If I sent you a proposal, like, how do you make that decision? And especially that decision to commit over months and to commit your money. And I want to also give you a frame on what you've been doing so far. Now, I don't know how many of those conversations with the HR people, with the people in these organizations you've had that you've sent the proposal to, but it might be that your number is like 5. You need to have 5 of those before you get 1.
Yeah.
And we don't know that number works out over the first 5. You might have to have 15 to get 3. And the frame to bring to all this is, how do you make all of that as fun as possible and as enjoyable as delivering the mindfulness course?
Yeah.
And this is definitely not the way that you'll do this. The way that you'll get to 15 conversations is not by doing terrible cold calling sales stuff that you hate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's something different. It's how do you make that process as enjoyable as you possibly can. So that's quite a bit of me speaking. What comes up for you?
I think I totally agree that people have experienced it will book it. And I realised, like, I've worked with loads of different people. Lots of them have been for the same organisation because I've had gigs within those. But totally, and you know, all of my kind of work has come from word of mouth. People who've done it. Like, I'm working in a school because a teacher came to my private course and then went to a school and was just like, "You've got to get this in." And then they booked me.
Is that with students or with teachers or both?
Teachers, with teachers.
So I just want to, like, you know that you're already doing what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing this with the teachers, you're in an organization, popping the bubble in an industry where, as you know far better than I do, sometimes people are pushed really far, and the work situation is not good. So I just want to make sure that you know that there's the gig, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I think that, I guess this is an adaptation. Like, that's a straight mindfulness course, which I think is, you know, I totally buy into it. But I also know that approach isn't for everyone. And that's why I'm excited to create an approach which I think is a bit more palatable for more people, in terms of giving people a taste that would then go on and do mindfulness. But also, for those people who are like, I'm not going to do that, still having a real impact. But you're right, I think that's a really good example of that already working. I think connecting with those people that have been on my courses. I'm running a day retreat as well, and I wonder whether I do something like that, because the cost is relatively small. And I really like all that. I think it's great.
And you can get people along to that day retreat, right? If there's somebody who you know would personally really benefit from this kind of work, and you can choose how cynical to be about this and how much to choose them based on that, and how much to choose them based on where they work or what they do. But you could say, look, I don't know who it is, right? But look, Alex, right? I know that you're really struggling at the moment with work. I'm running this one-day retreat, like, because I know how much you're struggling, and because I like you so much and I really admire what you do and the work you do at your work, I'd love to just invite you along. I'll waive the fee. You can just come because I know it'll really serve you powerfully. And then that person might be the person, right? That might be what it takes to get them in the room. And giving away a space on a day like that, I mean, maybe it's the thing that makes it profitable or not. But the truth is, if it leads to, you know, only one of those things has to lead to the person, you know, that person, Alex, the fictional Alex, then just has to go home, speak to his wife about the transformation that he's had in the day. And then maybe it's his wife's company or his wife's brother's company, which is the one. And this is not a kind of quick fix.
No.
It's a long game in which this word of mouth thing happens.
And it's interesting, I have been doing that to a certain degree. So reconnecting with all the people that I taught the mindfulness, and I'm kind of asking them, I'm talking about maybe doing a drop-in. And that's just because I really want to create a community around mindfulness in my area. I just think that'd be a wonderful thing. But also those people, I think, that really kind of bought in, I'm going to chat to them about their places of work as well. And sadly, because those groups are quite small and lots of people now work at the same sorts of companies, I need to, but I think that's a really good point. And it is so much more tangible and interesting having those conversations rather than the alternative. And then it's a case of maybe creating, when you then get, because you have that cheerleader, but then it's a case of creating something so the people that really make the decisions can experience it. But maybe, you know, like I just run loads of free sessions, give them half an hour on a lunchtime, like that's no cost to me. It's much easier than hiring a venue and running it. Like, that's a much more difficult version of it than just going to someone's business and like saying, I'll give you a free afternoon.
And you'll get some of the stuff that you want from doing this work from that as well. You'll find out maybe it doesn't work. You'll find out. You'll learn about it. You'll get paid in all sorts of other ways.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's banging. Yeah.
The other thing I'd add in, right, is what can you do to help the cheerleaders spread the word? So there's some things that you can say to them that you can, where you can be specific, right? If really what you want, and it's this clear, is to be in a private sector company, and I'm making this up a little bit, a private sector company where the culture is, where people mean really well, but the culture is struggling, and people are on the edge of burnout or are running on empty some of the time, then you can say that. You can say, look, I've got this mission that as I've developed this, I haven't lent into in all the ways I want to. There's this piece around private sector companies where the culture is struggling and people are on the edge of burnout. I'd love to just be able to go into one of those, on a lunchtime, run some classes for those people and see how it helps. Then that's a really easy thing for me to start thinking, who do I know?
Yeah.
You can ask, that's a powerful question to ask.
Yeah.
Who do you know? But
that's been the source of so much of my success previously. It's like, and I said that to you, it's like, when you would say, what else can I do? I'm like, well, think of some people that might be useful to speak to. And that's like all led to really interesting things and work. And like, it's brilliant because, yeah, I think it's such a useful question. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you need around taking this final piece out into the world?
No, I think I just need to do it. I think that it's just nice to check in with that and get that, like, yeah, I feel like I went down a bit of a cul-de-sac. Like I knew all that actually, I think, from before. I've done that previously, like with my other work. That's exactly what I've done, but it's just really nice to have met that block and then to come back out and be like, actually, there's loads I can do around that. Yeah.
Right. And it's easy to get, like, especially working alone, like we've said before, the no's are demoralizing, right?
Yeah.
Let's not pretend they're not. Every time,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you, but for me, like, sometimes it's the no response that is even more demoralizing, because then you're just left wondering. So if you've got these proposals out in the ether with these companies, that will sap your energy. And it might be a thing that I've learned to do is get that agreement on when people are going to come back as clear as possible. I sometimes even say to prospective clients, it's because it's really draining on everyone's energy. If there's this thing sat in your inbox, or your drafts, or wherever your to-do list, wherever you keep it, saying, I should go back to Robbie, but I'm a bit worried because I don't want to upset him by saying no. But then their energy gets drained because they're sitting on this thing and feeling a bit guilty about not getting back to me. And my energy's getting drained because I'm thinking, that felt like it had a real possibility and it's just disappeared into the ether.
Yeah.
And it's a professional thing, right? It takes it into that level of professionalism, and it also removes some of the neediness, I think. Like, it shows, like, I'm just interested in getting to whether this is the right thing for you or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a really nice thing. And that's a really hard, getting rid of that neediness. And like, it's really, yeah, I think that's a really useful tool to move away from that, for sure.
I want to just pull out something that I think is important about what you're offering as well. I think you know this, but one of the things you're offering to these companies is basically to design something specifically for them. I mean, it won't be necessarily, but that's actually what you will do because you're a designer and because you're an expert on learning and you're an expert on mindfulness and you're an expert on well-being. You will be designing something unique for them.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing for a leader, I think, to hear. It's what they're getting with you is not an identikit mindfulness course. Like, if that's what they need, you can deliver a great mindfulness course. But actually what they're going to get for you is an expert at creating a learning experience. And you're going to do that for them each time. And sometimes you'll just give them something you've already done. But most of the time, knowing you, it'll be something different to that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think it's really useful. Thanks.
Well, we're coming up to time. So I'm wondering, what are you present to in this moment?
I feel like that's like a nice resolution, actually. I feel like, yeah, it's been really nice to reflect on those different things. And I feel like Yeah, we've gone into some specific stuff as well, which is really useful in terms of moving those forwards. And I think maybe at the start I was wondering about there being a big shift in terms of I need to do more energy in that, but actually it's quite small. I think my energies are really well placed at the moment. The dancing stuff, like I'm putting a bit of time into that. It's kind of split between education and the mindful stuff. And what I want to do is just give a little bit of energy to the book, to the mindfulness book, and getting that stuff out there. And then it's going to be a little bit of extra energy in terms of getting those gigs on the new wellbeing stuff, and neither of those are huge projects. They're something that I think are long game. Let's put it out there and see, and just treat gently rather than having to force the issue. And the good thing is my other work puts me in a bit of a strong position of like not desperate to like make those work, and that's a good thing, I think. So yeah, I feel like this is like a good resolution point.
Yeah, I want to offer like one little thing.
Please.
I think that, let me just check this. I got an instinct that your long-term future may include very little of the education piece in the way that you're doing it at the moment. So whilst that may be wrong, but the way you talked about the other things still feels like those are the places probably where you're doing your best work.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're not doing great work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so there's two things I guess I'd offer. There's two reasons for saying that. One is at some point, I don't think it's now, at some point that work might be getting in the way of the other things. And the other is, how can you bring that work more and more of the inner pow?
Yeah, I think that's really, really useful to hear. And I totally had that with like tutoring last year. I just took too much tutoring on. So it was great. It was really well paid and I made loads of money. And I was like, but I'm not doing any of the stuff. I'm becoming a professional tutor, which is not what I wanted to do, because I got really caught up in money. And it's been really great to let go of that and therefore be able to do all this other stuff. So yeah, I think it will. And it'll be important just to check in on when I feel like it. Yeah, when I feel like it gets in the way. I think in terms of getting that inner pow, it's maybe bringing to all those things that sense of like, I think if I've got a room of people, then I can bring in some of that well-being stuff into all the training I do. Like just get it in there, like screw it.
Here's the thing for like, I like this. This is bringing us back to the start, right? Just don't answer the question they're asking you.
Yeah.
Answer the question with, and also, this is the important stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like it. Another question that I've been enjoying is like, and I think this is what you're asking, right? Maybe it's not the education doesn't bring the inner pow. It's how can I bring the inner pow to this particular piece of work? And also, I mean, you know this, right? But just like with the tutoring, it's not that you aren't delivering great work.
Oh yeah.
And
I'm enjoying it as well.
And you're enjoying it, but it's just, if what this is about is that mission, that's the piece that to me and to you, I think, feels least connected to it in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's the thing that I think I've put least like drive into, but it's great that it's happened. I've really loved it. I've loved the people I've worked with and things like that. And, when these gigs finish, it'll be interesting to see where they go. And I hope to have like a choice of maybe a point where I'm like, actually, I'm going to maybe park that now, but thanks. Like that would be a lovely point to get to.
Yeah. Quickly, I'm aware that like you at the start, you said maybe strategy and specific stuff. So what's just quickly, like, it doesn't have to be quick, but I think you can do it quickly. What's the strategy for the next year?
I think keep doing what I'm doing with the swing dance classes. I think the strategy I've used previously, we like get our students to kind of recruit new people at socials and things. We've got a really lovely community. I think that works. I think with the mindfulness stuff, I think it's a case of, in terms of getting those new gigs, using the techniques that we talked about before. Like I've got lots of people that have used them and really getting those people that have experienced stuff. And also I think just offering like a lunchtime lunchtime slots. With the wellbeing thing, I think it's the same thing. It's like, get out there, let people experience it, show them me, and then that's the ticket, isn't it? Because that has always been the way that I've done well. And then with the Lindy book, I think it's quite technical. I need to pull my fucking finger out my ass and like get on with it. What am I doing? And be kind to myself as well as part of that, and understand that, you know, it's something that is very dear to my heart, and that's where this all comes from. So yeah. But
don't forget to ask for help on that stuff. You could get someone to, if it's the technical bit of creating the book, you could get someone to do that for you.
Yeah.
You know, and it may be that that's the way to get through the resistance, or it may be that there's other people that can help in other ways as well.
Yeah.
But people are going to really love it, and you probably should get your finger out.
It's technical.
Yeah. What is that you wish you could hold from this conversation? If we had the magic wand or the genie in the lamp, what would remain from this conversation over the next year?
The like warm, fuzzy feeling of possibility and like the excitement of having achieved a lot and the potential that is there without worrying about all of the problems.
Yeah. Nice. Is there anything else that or maybe it's a slightly different frame on the same question, but what is from this conversation that if you could guarantee that you could remember one thing over the next year, what would you remember?
Probably that family is the most important thing. And the thing that I'm like most proud of.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Ed, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, mate, that was awesome. It was so useful. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, and just really looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I need to sign up to a mailing list or something. Do you have a mailing list?
No.
Okay, yeah. So you need to probably do that kind of thing as well, so that someone who's interested can know when you're running a one-day retreat, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mailing list to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Okay, thanks so much, man.
All right, thanks, dude.
Bye.